Okay, I'd like to invite Joe Powell, National Director, Wales People First, to speak. Thank you.
I just get the sound level right so I don't blast you out. I've asked Nick to take photographs of me, not to be vain, but I've got to prove that I actually do some work, because being from the northeast of England, nobody believes that actually
I do.
I work. Right, is that sound level all right?
Yes.
You can hear me, brilliant. I'm going to do a speech about why people first. In my speech today, I'm going to tell you why I think people first is important, why I believe in it, and why we are essential to the real challenges and fights for people with learning disabilities are faced with in changing times. But before I do so, I want to ask you to think about yourselves and how you feel about people first. Do you believe in what we do? Do you think we make a difference? Do you think we could or should be doing better? To any of you here who would answer this question negatively, I would say this to you, that you're exactly the kind of person we need within People First. You are exactly the kind of person who will challenge and affect change, and you are exactly the kind of person who will keep this organisation fresh and responsive to each challenge we face generation by generation. Remember, doubt and faith are part of the same scale. You cannot have faith in People First unless you have doubt. And this is why People First must always embrace their doubters. One of the things that frustrates me in the relatively short time I have been within People First is the fact that so many people try to define people first, what we are, what we should be, and identify those who aren't doing things in a people first way. This frustrates me for many reasons. Firstly, because to define people first is to suggest that people first is one thing, and that people first must always stand still. If we are, as our name suggests, people first, then we must remember that people's needs change from generation to generation, as well as the political times we are living in. And to be truly representative of people with learning disabilities across Wales, we must always be on the pulse of this and be ready to adapt whenever needs may be. This is another reason why we need to question ourselves as People First. Are we still relevant to the needs of people with learning disabilities? And if not, why not? Are we prepared to change? Are we prepared to take a step backwards and let someone else take over, should something better come along to replace us? Is it about us and our own egos, or are we in this to make lives better for people with learning disabilities across Wales? This is why I find it difficult when people criticise each other within People First in a non-constructive way. This is not only unhelpful, but it suggests that we do People First in the right way. But do we? How many people here think they get People First or always work in a People First way? I know that I don't. With the best of intentions, I still make mistakes, but I'm always prepared to learn and try again. And I believe that anyone who thinks they're getting it right is likely to be getting it wrong, but don't have the self-reflection skills to realise this. Later on, there will be tabletop discussions about a variety of topics, and I would like you to bear in mind what I have said. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves, the positives and the negatives, so we can make real change and make a real change to the way we do things. And in that way, we're in a better position to challenge councils and local authorities when we actually know where we're standing ourselves, I really believe. But what is the point of all this? And how does this answer the question, why People First? The point I'm trying to make is that in order to understand what People First is, we need to understand the human condition, be tolerant of each other's shortcomings, but at the same time, be able to have honest and open conversations with each other about taking the movement forward. Each generation is different, each political time is different, and if we don't respond, then we don't deserve to exist. And before we challenge the political system in front of us, we have to be clear about where we stand ourselves and to make sure we are all on board with the journey ahead. The expression united we stand, divided we fall may be very cliched, but it has become a cliche because it's very true. So why People First? As a person with Asperger's syndrome, I used to look at society as being a world of the non-disabled. as the world of those who didn't have any particular complex set of social difficulties. It took me a long time to realise society is something we all have to conform to, and even people without disabilities have to adapt and work within. How they act in society and how they are in their own lives isn't necessarily the same. For people with learning disabilities who have been left out of society for so long, being judged as second-class citizens and being stereotyped as non-equals, or as people who act inappropriately, People First offers us an opportunity to fight and campaign for our political rights in a dignified and appropriate way. In World War I, for instance, the suffragettes abandoned their campaign for votes in order to help man the ammunition factories and help the country in a time of crisis, putting their own political needs second to the greater need of the country. By doing this, not only did they prove their worth in the workplace and prove the doubters wrong, but the nobility of their action persuaded the government of the time to grant them their wish and give them their vote. The dignity and courage shown by Nelson Mandela and the way he resisted taking revenge and military action against the white people who had persecuted him for so long not only won the hearts and minds of the nation, it also set an example which ended a cycle of revenge. We too in the learning disability world, in order for us to be acknowledged as equal citizens, must demonstrate our willingness to take an active part in society and to show our worth as human beings, regardless of disability. Equality is not just about what we gain, but about the responsibility we are prepared to take to include and respect other people. Otherwise, respect becomes a tokenistic thing with very little value. And like the suffragettes and other oppressed groups, real sustainable change comes from engaging within the political process. And this is why People First is a special organisation and why it is like no other in the world, let alone Wales. Within People First, we have the chance to lead by example and to change the hearts and minds of the people of the world who may still view us as second-class citizens. Later on today, you will be having your annual general meeting, and beforehand, you've just elected your management team. Those people have the honour and privilege of representing the needs and rights of people with learning disabilities here in Ceredigion. That is no mean feat, and I want everyone to understand the importance of that role and how you help to influence change, both locally within Ceredigion and nationally through the organisation I work for, All Wales People First. The members of People First are what makes us truly special as a movement. Our members are real people affected by learning disabilities who have no other motives but to make their lives better and achieve the same opportunities as their peer group. This makes our members the purest of advocates. Our members can't be accused of having ulterior motives because their needs are transparent and open. Our members can't be accused of having professional or financial interests in what People First do because our members don't get paid. Paid workers like myself can be accused of these things whether they are true or not. This is why the organisation is always stronger when the members lead and the paid workers serve. There is no stronger advocacy than self-advocacy, so members, make yourself heard, both here today and through everything you do within People First. I've heard some employees within People First say that members should be protected or that members can't cope with certain things, so they have to take over for them. Remember, once we advocate for staff support, we give our control away. Once we give our control away, we cannot complain about the fact that we have been disempowered. The challenge to all members within People First, both here in Ceredigion and the groups across Wales, is to take the lead. It is your group, so take charge. But remember, taking charge means taking responsibility, and this can sometimes cause us to feel stressed and anxious. But this is sometimes the price we have to pay to be empowered. And remember, these are skills that can be learned through time and experience. But taking control doesn't mean you do it alone. This is why it is vital that responsibilities are shared, that conversations happen, and that all groups have a good board of trustees who are prepared to lend a hand. So please don't mistake taking responsibility for being abandoned. Whether you're a member of People First, whether you're a paid member of staff, a good board of trustees is so essential. I don't need to tell any of you here about the difficulties that we're facing politically. It affects all the members, and you are all at the sharp end of these radical changes. within government policy. People ask me as National Director, what's happening and what's going on? My answer to them and all of you today is, frankly, I don't know. None of the directors of the main learning disability and disability charities know what is happening because the information isn't clear. I am currently working with the directors of Learning Disability Wales, Mencap Cymru and the All Wales Forum of Parents and Carers through the Learning Disability Advisory Group Consortium to get answers, but answers aren't always guarantees. Answers are often subjective. In other words, one person may reassure us that what they're doing won't adversely affect the learning disability community, but only when the new Social Services and Wellbeing Bill is rolled out in 2016 will we really know if it is a good thing or a bad thing. What I do know, however, is this, that people with learning disabilities are amongst the poorest people in British society, and in British society the gulf between the rich and the poor is widening in a way I haven't witnessed before in my lifetime. People with learning disabilities who themselves have been the biggest advocates for entering the workplace and playing a role in their society are now being scapegoated by society as dole bludgers. And it can't just be a coincidence that hate crime figures have skyrocketed ever since the benefit clampdown propaganda. As long as this remains the case, this is why people first. Citizens Advice Bureau statistics show only that 0.7% of benefit claimants are fraudulent. And in actual fact, there are 2.5% of the population who are entitled to benefits but aren't receiving their entitlement. The whole benefit scrounging moral panic is a myth, and it is a politically driven myth because it is popular with the general public who falsely believe they are paying too much tax for people to be idle. For this reason, even socialist-based political parties dare challenge it. And as long as that remains the case, this is why we need people first. People with learning disabilities who were rejected by the workforce and by society are now expected to work and aren't even guaranteed their benefits anymore. Many people with learning disabilities are being denied their benefits if they don't have physical disabilities. But 85% of these decisions are overturned on appeal. Only then is the medical evidence taken into account. Many people with learning disabilities aren't aware they can appeal, and many people don't have the support to do so. The government response to this is to ask for funding for Citizens Advice Bureau agencies and other benefit support agencies because they are winning too many cases. The Citizens Advice Bureau has reported, this is a major issue at the moment in Carmarthenshire and Powys. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but in Carmarthenshire and Powys, they are currently in the process of massive cuts to benefit advice agencies. The Citizens Advice Bureau have reported massive cuts in their funding, and considering over 50% of the work they do is in benefits advice since the new benefit reforms, you can imagine the potential impact this may have. My response to this is very simple. If society wants people with learning disabilities to work, then let's give them jobs. If we can't give them jobs, then we must give them their benefits. They can't have it both ways, except for the fact that they can and that they are doing. 55% of those declared fit to work have failed to find jobs and are left without any income. The taxpayer in England has been paying out £110 million a year to ATOS to administer the cuts. The UK government has been able to renew the Trident nuclear defence system at a cost of £120 billion to the taxpayer of this country, which was unnecessary, advised by experts, given the fact that the threat of the Cold War was over and what we had was already appropriate. No one is naive enough to deny that the country isn't in financial difficulty, but that doesn't justify these brutal cuts, which have been brought upon us by the bankers and the political establishment who play a large part in society, and is to be repaid by the sick and the disabled who played no part in this crisis. I spoke earlier about the quality and the responsibility that comes with it, so I'd like you all to think about this. If people with learning disabilities weren't allowed to be involved in the financial governance of society, is it fair that they are suffering the consequences, given the fact we had no power to be involved in any of the process? We had none of the power, but we shall be taking the brunt of the responsibility. So I ask you all here now, Or are we really all in this together? This is the last bit of the blurb of the speech. One of the criticisms I've heard about People First is that we aren't militant enough. As director of All Wales People First, I would say this in response to that. I personally have no objections to taking militant action if necessary, but I believe it is vital, in line with what I said earlier, that we are sensible and strategic about how we respond to the situation. Remember, the world is not only watching the actions of government, but as a legitimate political organisation, they are watching us too. I believe it is essential that we demonstrate our willingness to engage with the political process as appropriately and thoroughly as possible, in order, if the time does come, we can legitimately say that we exhausted all other avenues before taking action. And I think this is vital if we are to win over public sympathy to our cause. I would urge you all in today's conference to think about these issues in your discussion groups, to think about what you expect of your local authorities, and to speak to your National Council representative about what you expect of us as All Wales People First too. It's your voice, it's your organisation, and we all work for you. So if you aren't happy, use People First as your voice piece to effect a positive change. And to me, that's the real answer to why People First. Thank you very much.